you spend to soften something. The receipt is small, but the feeling underneath never is. It happens after a hard day. Your thumb opens the app before your mind even forms a reason. Then the guilt arrives fast, not just about money, but about needing comfort from something that disappears. You may call it lack of discipline, but often it is stress, sadness, loneliness, or exhaustion wearing a price tag. By the end, this will feel clearer, not because you are broken, but because your pattern finally has language. Stress spending usually is not about stuff. It is about changing your inner weather as quickly as possible. A tense mind wants relief now. A sad mind wants warmth now. Buying can briefly pretend to offer both. That is why the urge feels urgent. Your nervous system is chasing regulation, not a package on the doorstep. You might see it at night. The apartment is quiet, dishes wait, and suddenly new shoes seem strangely necessary. Or after a difficult conversation. You leave the parking lot unsettled, then reward yourself before the feeling can fully land. The purchase can look random, but the timing is rarely random, and that timing tells the real story. Maybe it is a beauty product, maybe takeout, gadgets, candles, books, or one more household item you swear will help. The object changes, yet the emotional job stays similar. It offers comfort, distraction, hope, or a tiny sense of control. For a few minutes, you feel lifted. You're deciding, choosing, anticipating, and imagining a slightly better version of life. That small lift matters more than people realize. Anticipation itself can feel like temporary rescue when emotions feel heavy. Then the mood falls again. The bag sits there and your original feeling quietly walks back into the room. That second drop is confusing. You got the thing you wanted, yet relief vanishes faster than expected. So many people blame themselves there, but here is the deeper truth most never learn to see. The purchase was never designed to heal sadness. It only interrupted it long enough to make you feel briefly different. An interruption can become a habit, especially if you grew up without many safe ways to settle hard feelings. Some families taught emotions directly. Others taught silence, tension, overworking, or treating yourself only after enduring enough. If comfort felt scarce growing up, spending can feel like self-provided tenderness you once waited for from someone else. If the house felt unpredictable, small purchases can feel stabilizing. You can choose them when people feel harder to trust. If money was always discussed with fear, your body may still react to stress by grasping for immediate emotional safety. That is why the pattern feels irrational only on the surface. Underneath, it often makes painful emotional sense. You are not spending because you are careless. You are spending because something inside wants relief, reward, or reassurance. Sometimes the urge appears right after being strong. You handled everyone else all day, then finally collapse into private wanting. A purchase becomes a permission slip. It says, I get care too, even if I provide it. That is especially powerful for adults who learn usefulness early. When worth came from giving, receiving can feel suspicious. So instead of resting, you purchase. Instead of being comforted, you manufacture a moment that resembles comfort. Sadness can create a different version of this. Not urgent and buzzy, but slow, foggy, and quietly empty. In that state, buying can feel like proof of life. It creates movement when your inner world feels stuck. The cart becomes a small future. It lets you imagine tomorrow holding something nicer than what today feels like. That is why packages can carry fantasy. Not unrealistic fantasy, just emotional possibility wrapped in cardboard and tape. Maybe the sweater means reinvention. Maybe this kitchen tool means you will become organized, nourished, and finally back in control. Maybe that lamp means home will feel softer. Maybe that notebook means your mind will too. The item becomes symbolic very quickly. You are buying the feeling attached to the object more than the object itself. And symbols are powerful when you are depleted. They promise identity, comfort, and change in one easy motion. But here is the hard part. If the feeling stays untouched, the symbol must work harder each time. So the purchase gets bigger, more frequent, or more secretive. Not because you are shallow, but because relief keeps fading. Secrecy often enters quietly. You minimize the total or hide the bag before anyone notices. Another delivery can feel exposing, so the original sadness gets joined by shame too, quickly. Shame makes escape feel more necessary. What hurt first now demands another fast interruption again. That is how loops form. One feeling hurts, spending interrupts it, then guilt becomes the next feeling. And because the brain loves fast solutions, it remembers the interruption more strongly than the disappointment afterward. So next time stress rises, the urge returns early. It arrives fast because your mind is trying to help. That word matters. Help. Even your unhelpful patterns usually began as attempts to protect you from something overwhelming. Maybe from boredom that felt lonely. Maybe from grief you never had room to process. Maybe from pressure without softness. Maybe from a childhood where treats marked the only safe brightness, or where buying something meant the tension briefly stopped. Children notice those pairings deeply. They learn which moments bring ease, and the body stores those lessons for years. So adulthood can replay them automatically. A rough week happens, and suddenly comfort seems to live behind a checkout button. Notice how personal the urge feels. Your brain selects items that match the version of care you secretly crave. Someone starved for beauty buys little luxuries. Someone starved for ease orders convenience. Someone starved for recognition buys visible upgrades. Someone starved for calm buys organization tools. Someone starved for hope buys self-improvement, promises dressed as products. That does not make the desire fake. It means the purchase is carrying emotional meaning far beyond its price. And once you see that meaning, the pattern stops looking random. It starts looking like an emotional language you inherited. Maybe you learned that comfort must be earned, so you spend only after pushing yourself to the edge. Maybe you learned that sadness should stay hidden, so buying becomes the acceptable version of asking for soothing. Maybe you learned that appearances keep you safe, so stress sends you toward purchases that make life look together. Maybe you learned that enough can disappear quickly, so you swing between clutching money and overspending for relief. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, pause there. Not to judge yourself, but to recognize how intelligent adaptation can look messy. What do you usually reach for first? Clothes, food, home items, tiny treats, expensive upgrades, or endless browsing without buying? If you want, share that pattern below. Your honesty may name something another person has never known how to explain. And notice the moment before the urge. Was it pressure, rejection, numbness, conflict, loneliness, or the crash after overperforming? That moment matters more than the item. It is usually where the real story has been waiting. Stress spending is rarely greed. More often, it is grief, depletion, or comfort searching for a doorway. Sometimes that doorway appears after success. You finish something hard and suddenly want more, not less. That can feel confusing at first, but achievement often wakes old deprivation, not simple indulgence. It stirs the part that whispers finally, "Can I have something now? After all that effort, please." If your childhood linked to reward with spending, achievement may automatically trigger a buying response before genuine rest even registers. And if sadness sits underneath everything, purchases can become punctuation, bright marks inside a sentence you struggle to read. That is why telling yourself to stop often fails. You are arguing with a coping pattern without understanding its job. When a pattern has a job, shame cannot replace it. Shame only makes the nervous system search harder for relief. Understanding changes the tone completely. Instead of "what is wrong with me?" ask what feeling wanted care. That question is gentle but powerful. It slows the automatic loop without turning your pain into a personal defect. It also reveals something important. Many spending urges are less about wanting more and more about wanting softer. Softer evenings, softer thoughts, softer landings after stress, softer ways to exist inside yourself when the day felt hard. When people never learned how to give themselves softness directly, they often try to purchase it indirectly. That does not mean every treat is emotional avoidance. Sometimes a purchase is simply enjoyable, useful, or beautifully ordinary. The difference is usually in the energy. One choice feels grounded, while the other feels urgent, foggy, or rescuing. Rescuing is the clue. When an object starts feeling like emotional emergency equipment, something deeper is asking to be heard. Maybe it is the part of you that feels unseen. Maybe the part that only relaxes when receiving becomes tangible. Maybe it is exhaustion masquerading as desire. Maybe sadness dresses in prettier colors so you will let it stay. This is why the same person can be careful one week and impulsive the next. Mood changes money's meaning. Money is never only math. It touches identity, safety, love, freedom, power, belonging, and the fear of not enough. So when life feels emotionally expensive, spending can look like a shortcut toward relief. Not wise relief, just immediate relief. Immediate relief has always been tempting, especially for people who had to become composed before they felt supported. You may even notice a strange afterglow before regret. A few quiet minutes where choosing something felt like choosing yourself. That feeling deserves compassion, not mockery. It tells you how hungry you have been for comfort with no conditions. The deeper shift begins there, not with punishment, but with seeing the hunger clearly and refusing to call it weakness. Because once hunger is named, you stop mistaking it for a personality flaw. You start recognizing an unmet emotional need. And unmet needs do not disappear through criticism. They usually get louder, sneakier, and more expensive when ignored. So the goal is not becoming a machine. It is noticing the feeling before the cart becomes a confession. Maybe the feeling says, I need gentleness. Maybe it says, I feel empty. Maybe it says, I need comfort now. Even that tiny pause can change everything. It does not erase desire, but it returns choice to you. A helpful first step is simple. When the urge rises, ask what this purchase hopes to make you feel. Safer, prettier, rewarded, calmer, less alone, more in control, more alive? The answer is usually emotional before it is practical. Then let that answer matter, not as a rule, but as information your inner world has been trying to send. If the answer is calmer, maybe what hurts is overstimulation. If it is loved, the day felt cold. If the answer is control, maybe life felt chaotic. If it is alive, sadness has flattened everything lately. That kind of honesty is not dramatic. It is how you stop treating symptoms while missing the real ache. And when you miss the real ache, no delivery can satisfy it for long. The craving simply changes outfits. This pattern was learned in pieces. Through stress, family atmosphere, loneliness, pressure, reward, and the quiet habits, repetition builds. Which means it can soften in pieces too, through awareness, self-respect, and moments of noticing that interrupt the old script. Not perfectly, and not overnight, but gently enough that spending no longer has to carry every feeling by itself. You were never weak for wanting relief. You were human, reaching for the fastest warmth available in the moment. Now we get to become more curious than ashamed. Curiosity opens doors that self-criticism keeps locked. If this spoke to your experience, tell me what feeling usually sits underneath your urge to spend. And if you want more conversations like this, subscribe and turn on the bell so we can keep unpacking together. Your money habits are not your character. They are messages, and understanding them might be the kindest wealth you build.